Okay, welcome and thank you for tuning in to a brief introduction to my talk, Gay, Guilt, and God, based on two books. One of them, it's What the Bible Really Says About Homosexuality by Daniel Helminiak, and the other one is the introduction to the book, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Even though the central topic of this presentation is about God's message on homosexuality through the Bible, I consider that it's very important to make my audience aware of how our mind works. How do we have some concepts and beliefs stored in our minds? In this case, obviously, about homosexuality. How is it that kids that are 9, 10 years old, they already have concepts about homosexuality? They know that it's wrong. It's also important to know that these concepts, at some point in our lives, they become subconscious, and they are expressed throughout our lives through feelings. Feelings of anger towards gay people, feelings of fear, of uncomfortableness, and in many cases gay people have a lot of guilt because of being homosexual. If you ask somebody that doesn't know much about homosexuality, what do they think about it, they immediately get very uncomfortable. They say that's not right, they get very, very defensive. And at the end, most likely, some people would say, and the Bible condemns it, so it must be wrong. But they don't know where it says it, they don't know why it says it, so it's important that we become aware of all these things. So this brings us to the first part of my presentation, which is to prepare the audience so the biblical message doesn't fall on deaf ears. I could be the best presenter in the world, I could have the best presentation, but if people are not ready to listen, then my efforts are totally wasted. People would not, what I mean when not ready is that people come in an attitude of closeness, not being receptive, and most likely they're not aware of it. It's just that their subconscious is totally shut down to new ideas. They don't want to change anything, because change produces, at the same time, produces guilt or produces fear, and in many cases it produces disapproval. What is my family going to think if I hang out with gay people, or if I approve gay people? What is my church going to say if I'm gay? And so forth. So they rather stay away from these concepts and not allow any change. On the other hand, if people are ready to listen, if people come in an open and receptive attitude, then it's different, because these people can listen to the message or to the information given, process it, understand it, and then, most importantly, autonomously, they can make up their minds to say, I believe this or I don't believe that. So the important key over here is independently or autonomously make a decision, not based on what my parents said, what the church said, what the society, what the government says. I make my own decisions. Just think how different the world would be if we had a society where people were more responsible with their decisions, more autonomous, less prone to manipulation. The media today is amazing how they manipulate us into what to eat, what to wear, what to drive, what to say, what not to say, etc., etc. And we all believe these things, and they're stored in our minds. Okay, so once this part has been cleared and understood, I dive into the second part of the presentation, which is the biblical evidence. All those studies and research that the scholars have found and that the author gathered in his book in order to conclude that the Bible doesn't really condemn homosexuality as we understand it today. In this part, we will touch the 5 main texts that the Bible has, or that the Bible deals with homosexuality, that being Genesis, the story of Lot and Sodom, and the Holiness Code in Leviticus, these two being the Old Testament. And in the New Testament we will have Corinthians, we will have Timothy, and at the end we will have Romans, the letter of St. Paul to the Romans. The purpose over here is to understand the big picture. If we don't understand the big picture, we're just left with those little texts. And yes, a man should not lie with a man because it's an abomination. But we would also have to put people that work on Saturdays, we will have to put them to death. People that are adulterers or commit adultery, they should be put to death. People that curse their father and their mother, they should be put to death. We would have fathers selling their daughters to slavery. We would have women could not wear any jewelry to church. Women could not speak in church, and so forth. So all these are examples that are in the Bible. Of course, they're in the Bible that condemn all these things, all these behaviors.
I like your show. I like how you call homosexuality an abomination.
I don't say homosexuality is an abomination, Mr. President. The Bible does.
Yes, it does. Leviticus
18:22.
chapter and verse. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions while I had you here. I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. She's a Georgetown sophomore, speaks fluent Italian, always cleared the table when it was her turn. What would a good price for her be? While thinking about that, can I ask another? My chief of staff insists on working on the Sabbath. Exodus 35:2 clearly says he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself, or is it okay to call the police?
So since we don't agree with them, we would have to really understand what's the big picture. What was the culture of the day? What was the grammar and the construction of the texts? What were the surrounding texts of all these little verses that we're analyzing? What does the whole picture say? What does the whole letter say, so that we can get a better idea what the whole message was? We would have to look at the vocabulary. We would have to look at the translations from Aramaic into Hebrew, from Hebrew into Greek, and from Greek to all the languages that we studied, that we use today. Was it consistent? Were the words the same in all parts of the mean the same in all parts of the Bible? Why or why not? So all these things will allow us to understand what is it that the author really wanted to say, or was inspired by God to say through his writings, scriptures. I will also mention the two approaches that the main churches use in order to read the Bible. One of them is the literal approach, which takes everything to face value. Like, for example, if your left eye makes you sin, it's better that you pluck it out, because it's better to go into the heavens without an eye than with both eyes. And if your right hand makes you sin, it's better that you cut it off, because it's better to go to heaven. Something like that. The other approach is the historical critical approach, which is the one that the author uses and the scholars have used in order to understand what is it that the Bible really says to us when we read it. Okay, so in essence, in summary, my presentation, besides the biblical evidence, is to create awareness on how we think, how those concepts get in our minds, and that we are always a choice. We're always a choice to change them. We need sometimes to make an inventory of all those beliefs that we have stored in our minds and say, this one supports the way I want to live, and this one doesn't. And sometimes we have to be courageous, because it could create some problems with our families, with societies, because we're taking a stand for something, which might be a stand that they don't agree with. But we are independent in our way of thinking, and we make certain decisions. Some administrative details about the presentation. This is a 3 to 3.5 hour presentation, depending on the audience participation. I have included a break, a 20-minute break. I have 20 to 21 minutes of video and audio clips. And if you're interested, I can bring my presentation to your community. I have my own computer, my own video projector, and sound system. So that wouldn't be a problem. If you're interested, please give me a call at 954-682-2233. I would love to bring my presentation to your community. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.